When the news broke, I was actually just about to film #AskGSM, cheap plug on YouTube only, and XRWrestling.net technically. But RJ and I were just about to sit down to film that video when he got the update on his phone from TMZ that he had to retire. And when I heard that, it was devastating news, very disappointing news. But like I told this to John, I've told this to many people in the last 24 hours, it wasn't super surprising. Like I said, I wrote an article for Hidden Remote at the beginning of the year that said Daniel Bryan will leave WWE. Now, I said that because I figured he wouldn't, quote-unquote, retire, because I figured he would wrestle elsewhere. But upon hearing what Daniel Bryan said last night, and that his health really isn't the greatest of shape after so many bumps and bruises and concussions that he has suffered over the course of his 20-year career in wrestling, that's no longer possible. But still, I mean, after being out for almost 10 months at this point, he got... I believe he suffered the concussion in mid-April on the European tour the WWE was on last April, but he officially left and vacated the Intercontinental Championship in mid-May. And like I said, a lot of people were hoping that he would be back in the Royal Rumble match. I really wasn't... I mean, I would have loved to see it. I wasn't holding out hope just because I didn't think it was all that realistic. But if he had been ready to go, they would have cleared him before that. You know what I mean? I felt... Especially with Corey Graves, I know Corey Graves, Daniel Bryan, two very different superstars in the pecking order on opposite sides of the spectrum in WWE. One was the developmental guy, the other one was one of the biggest stars that we've seen in years in WWE. But it would have been double standards had they cleared one and not the other. Corey Graves also suffered 2 concussions. I have no idea what his prior history was with concussions before that point, before he officially retired in late 2014. But he had to retire because of those concussions, and it was probably for the better. I'm thinking, you hear a concussion, it's not something that takes a physical toll on the body. Maybe not physical, but something that you can tell. It's not like a broken arm or maybe even a broken neck that does become apparent and they have to wear a neck brace for, or whatever it might be. A broken leg that also can end one's career or whatever. A concussion is something that's internal, that's... Especially with the most recent movie that came out. I did not get to see it. I heard it was great, though, with Will Smith that came out on Christmas. Especially with all that going on, all the concussion awareness, it just wouldn't have been good timing at all for Daniel Bryan to come back to action, at least the WWE. And upon hearing what he said last night, that if he wrestled again, not that he would die or anything like Edge, when he had the neck surgery or whatever, and one bad bump could paralyze him forever. But it would not be well. And like Daniel Bryan said himself, he's going to be starting a family soon with Brie Bella. I don't know how long she'll be around for. I'm sure not that much longer. But she will be contending for the championship at Fastlane next Sunday. We'll be getting to our Fastlane predictions next week here on the show. Hopefully with RJ. He's once again at internship this Tuesday or today when I'm recording this. Whenever you listen to this during the week, but he should be back next week for that. But nevertheless, a great retirement promo right up there with Edge's, which I did shed a tear for. That completely took me by surprise. That one, no one saw coming when that happened. And at least Daniel Bryan, we kind of got an inkling that it was possible over the last couple of months. Shawn Michaels was great. Ric Flair's, I feel like, can't be topped. But he almost broke down at a few points. Daniel Bryan, that is, when he was talking about his father. He held himself together like a true professional. In his hometown, not his hometown, but his home state of Washington, in Seattle, just an amazing crowd all night long, specifically for that ending segment. And I'm glad it went out the way, he went out on maybe not his terms. He wouldn't have retired the way that he wanted to, but I mean, look at the career that he left behind. Not even including the stuff backstage, and which I'll get to momentarily, but just the accomplishments alone that he had in WWE in his 6-year career. I mean, Austin... even Austin in WWE wrestled from 96 to, 2003? And that wasn't even as regular. He was wrestling part-time from 2000 onward. He came back in 01, wrestled all of that year, but he wasn't a regular in 02. He was around for half of the year, wrestled a couple matches in 03, then officially retired. So, it kind of reminds me of that in a way. I'm not saying he's the next he was the Stone Cold Steve Austin. He kind of was in the way that he was... in terms of popularity-wise, at least, in 2013, 2014, Daniel Bryan, that is. But just in terms of career span, and, Daniel Bryan, of course, wrestled for a long time before that. But just look at his accomplishments alone over the past 6 years. The former United States champion, Intercontinental champion, Tag Team champion, Money in the Bank winner, former World Heavyweight champion, 3-time WWE champion, main evented WrestleMania, one of few people to have competed at WrestleMania twice if not won at WrestleMania twice, period. I don't think many people, if anyone else, can say that. And having the impact that he did on that company, like I said to John, in the latter half of 2013, early part of 2014 was just incredible. I mean, there's really not many other words to describe it other than just incredible, amazing, unprecedented, with the way that he single-handedly changed the card for WrestleMania 30 and even, to an extent, WrestleMania 31, with all the popularity, all the backlash coming out of him not winning in 2015 when I believe he should have. That's another discussion for another day. It's long gone now. It's a moot point. But because of the backlash surrounding that, he wasn't put in the main event of WrestleMania 31, granted, but he was put in contention for the championship en route to WrestleMania that year in a great match with Roman Reigns at last year's Fastlane event and ended up winning the Intercontinental Championship. Had it not been for that, he probably would have faced Sheamus again at WrestleMania, a match that WWE, specifically Vince, had wanted to do for years and years and years, and it never came to fruition, thankfully. But it looks like, just the career that he left behind will just be unparalleled, I think is the perfect word to sum up Daniel Bryan's career in WWE alone. And like John said, I talked about it before in a past video blog. I talked about it yesterday on the Facebook page and hashtag thank you Daniel Bryan, that we got to meet him. Back then, that was when I officially became a fan of Daniel Bryan. And only 2 weeks earlier did he win the United States Championship at the 2010 Night of Champions pay-per-view. And I will always say this, I've always said this, and I will continue to say my favorite Daniel Bryan match, which is absurd to say, I'm sure, considering all the other great matches he had in WWE with CM Punk, another personal favorite of mine, the triple threat at WrestleMania, the match with Triple H at WrestleMania, the match with Sheamus from 2012's Extreme Rules in Chicago. All of those matches were amazing, but my personal connection lies within that match at Night of Champions 2010, the second only ever pay-per-view I ordered. A very, very few before the network came around. And not because of that one match, but just that match, it stole the show for me. I thought it was Miz's best WWE match ever, if not one of them. Definitely not Daniel Bryan's best WWE match, but my favorite match of his, because I knew from 2 weeks from that point forward, because even before he came back to WWE at SummerSlam that year, I knew I was going to meet him at this show in early October. And I think it might have been Waterbury, or I'm pretty sure it was Waterbury, not Danbury, Connecticut. I knew that I was meeting him, and if he won this match against Miz, that I would get to meet him as United States champion. He was defending the belt that Sunday at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. I met him on October 1st. It was a great experience. The match was great. I always watch back that pay-per-view, that one match, and I always get chills listening to that call and Michael Cole going crazy. That was back when he hated Daniel Bryan. He was burying him every single week. It was great. So that's my personal favorite Daniel Bryan match, and I'll probably do an article on that similar to John, either for nexteraWrestling.net or whatever else in the next week or so. Maybe even a video blog, we'll see. But even kind of going beyond the stuff that he did in the ring, kind of looking in the impact that he had on the industry, and I've talked about this with a number of people over the last 24 hours, but like I said, other than just completely changing the entire landscape of the WrestleMania card based off how over he was in late 2013, early 2014, just kind of changing the perception of indie guys in WWE. I think it was Joey Styles who pointed that out on Twitter yesterday, either during the promo or afterwards or whatever it might have been, pointing out, in my opinion, both him and CM Punk, because before CM Punk got hot in 2011, there really weren't many indie guys in the WWE system. And if they were either in developmental, not really doing much, not getting called up. Rollins didn't get called up for a solid 2 years. He got signed in late 2010, and he kind of floundered. I mean, he did some great stuff down in FCW, don't get me wrong, but he never got called up as soon as he probably should have. And if he did, he probably would have floundered had it not been for the Shield. And that's not a reflection on his talent. That's just a reflection on how the WWE landscape was at that period in time. And, of course, the same night that CM Punk had one of the best matches, my favorite CM Punk match of all time at the 2011, my favorite match period of all time, with John Cena, the Money in the Bank 2011 pay-per-view. That same night, Daniel Bryan won Money in the Bank, went on to cash it in to become world champion, and the rest is history. And it's amazing the fact that he lost the world championship in 18 seconds. The backlash also from that was a turning point in the Daniel Bryan character. Now, had that not happened, I don't know what would have happened. And had they had a great match, who knows? But because he lost in such embarrassing fashion at that year's WrestleMania in 2012 in Miami at WrestleMania 28 was really a turning point for me, putting aside the U.S. title win and the Money in the Bank win, all that other stuff that he had success for in the prior 2 years that he had in WWE. That one loss and the way that it went down and the fan reaction and the next night's WrestleMania crowd, post-WrestleMania crowd on Raw, was what really, to me, cemented him as a star in the main event scene. And in the years that followed. But just an incredible impact. I mean, I don't think anyway that you would see guys like Sami Zayn, Finn Balor, Hideo Itami, Cesaro, Seth Rollins. Not that they wouldn't be in WWE, but I don't think they would be where they are currently on the card had it not been for guys like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk kind of changing the perception of what it is to be a successful indie talent based off. I mean, Bryan wasn't the greatest mic worker, but you look at his in-ring work alone, and he really kind of made a character for himself, especially during the time that, like John mentioned, during Team Hell No. I mean, I liked Daniel Bryan before that, like I said, but that stuff that he did with Team Hell No was hysterical. Some of the best stuff I've ever seen during WWE in the year of 2013, which I thought was kind of not a down year, but it certainly was one of my favorite years in the company's history in recent years since I've been a fan anyway. But the Team Hell No stuff I thought was amazing, and that kind of came out of nowhere. It just kind of happened out of happenstance, just because they paired the two together, not expecting anything to come from it because they had no plans for either Kane or Bryan, and it blossomed into something amazing. But all in all, just a legendary, iconic career for Daniel Bryan, not only in wrestling and not only in WWE, but in wrestling in general. And he will be missed. Such an impact that he made on the company and wrestling, period, based off the places that he wrestled, including WWE and Ring of Honor and Japan and all over the independent scene. But like I said to John, hopefully he will continue to play a role of some sort in WWE going forward. I know he had previously turned down roles to be an announcer or trainer or whatever, but I'm pretty sure, like he said, he fought it for a long time. And he went to doctor after doctor after doctor, and they all cleared him except for this one guy who then said he could, if he wrestled again, he could risk further injury. But I think that, like I said, he turned down those roles before he had found out that he couldn't wrestle again. So maybe going forward we'll find out what his status is with the company, what his contract status is. I have no idea. I think I read something on it yesterday. I just slipped my mind. I have no idea, thinking back on it now. But even still, I hope to see him involved in the company in some fashion, some form or fashion going forward, whether it be as a GM, which Tom from WWE EC Radio, we'll talk to him on Thursday. I'll get into that in just a minute. He pitched to me this morning that maybe you have Daniel Bryan as the GM, or I know Regal's doing a great job, but maybe you have him in charge of NXT and storyline, and you have Triple H in charge of the main roster. You can have a great dynamic there, and he doesn't want NXT call-ups because they're, Daniel Bryan is in charge of them. Whatever. There's some fun stuff you could do in storyline. Either him as commissioner, a la Mick Foley in 2000, which I thought was some of the best TV I've ever seen from that time period. I love the Attitude Era. I don't love the Attitude Era, but I mean, the Attitude Era speaks for itself. But I go back and watch segments from that time period, and Mick Foley was one of the best parts about WWE, in my opinion, at that time in the latter half of 2000 as commissioner. It was just the segments that he had were priceless with Edge and Christian and Kurt Angle, and the list goes on and on. I feel like Daniel Bryan, especially if he's channeling his inner Team Hell No self, can have a great run as commissioner if they gave him that role, if he chose to accept it. But like John said, I absolutely agree. He is Hall of Fame bound, and that probably will happen. I mean, I could say it is happening as soon as next year. I wouldn't put him in as soon as next year. I would put him in later down the line, but I wouldn't, be objected to him going in next year just because, we've seen people like Edge going really, really soon, Booker T. It might be because, and from what I've seen, Edge's contract had actually expired the month after he got inducted, and they wanted to make sure they got him in the Hall of Fame, so they don't risk him, getting on bad terms with the company or whatever else happened or could happen. Like we've seen in the past. Warrior didn't get in the Hall of Fame before he was already on bad terms with the company for years before he eventually went in, and they don't want a repeat of that with all these other people because you never know what might happen. But hopefully he does go in at some point. It could be as soon as next year. That'd be fine, but he definitely is Hall of Fame worthy in my opinion. So like I said, hashtag thank you Daniel Bryan. He will be missed, and I look forward to seeing what his future holds, whether it be in the world of wrestling or just in general. I'm sure his future is very bright.